All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order here. Do a little bit of introductions here in the room. We'll start out. And why don't we go ahead and start over here with Joshua Mom. Go ahead and give us your introduction.
Joshua Mall, City of Fort Collins Transport. Dana Horkle, City of Fort Collins Engineering Department. Eric Tracy, Member County Engineering.
Keith Wakefield, City of Loveland.
Jerome Rouser, NFRMPO.
Michaela Gralla, North Front Range NPO. Elizabeth Arnold, North Front Range NPO.
Jonathan Stoddard, North Front Range NPO.
Evan Pinkham of Fulton County.
Shane Porter, Texas.
So we'll go online. Anyone want to introduce themselves online?
Tim Host with Jonestown.
Candace Volkers. Sorry, Candace Volkers, City of Loveland Transit.
Renee Jordan, Greeley Evans Transit.
Hunter Grallum, Town of Windsor, just filling in for Scott Pearson today.
Denise Staley with Weld County.
All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. We'll move on to agenda item number 2, which is public comment. We'll give 2 minutes to each person if there's any public comment. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the May 20th, 2026 meeting minutes. I'll look for any questions on those meeting minutes, any adjustments, and look for a motion.
Motion to approve the May meeting minutes.
All right, is there a second?
A second.
All right, got a second. So all in favor of approval of the May 20th, 2026 meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. With that, we'll approve the meeting minutes and move on to the lead planning agency for air quality agenda.
We have a revised agenda. We're going to do that in a MMOF update.
All right.
And Medora is online.
Well, then we'll kick it off to Medora with the 2026 MMOF update with Medora.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to work on, oh, you have the presentation, great. Hi everyone, my name is Medora Bornhoft. I work at CDOT in the Office of Multimodal Planning, working on the MMOF program alongside Michael Snow. And so today I just want to give you an update for the program that was provided at the June STAC meeting, but we wanted to share with you all so you had a chance to get this information and see what questions you have. So in the most recent legislative session, 2 bills were passed that impact the MMOF program. One of them, House Bill 1399, eliminated 3 years of general fund transfers into the program. 10.5 per year is the amount that MMOF had been receiving from the general fund. So that's a total elimination of $31.5 million over the next 3 years. And the other bill that passed is House Bill 1398, and this adjusted the local share within the program. So historically, the local portion of the program received 85% of the MMOF funds, which is then distributed out to the 5 MPOs and 10 TPRs to award. And the other 15% was set aside for the state MMOF program, which traditionally has gone to busing. So with this bill, the 85-15% split shifted to 70%, 30%, with 70% of the funds going to the local program. So it is a reduction in the amount of funds going to the North Front Range MPO and the other TPRs and MPOs. And the legislature did this due to concerns with the amount of funding going to busing and to not further reduce the amount of state funds going to busing. So while we were accounting for these legislative adjustments to the program, we took an updated look at forecasts and available interest earnings. And so we made some other revenue adjustments when we were updating our forecasts to account for those. So those adjustments include adding an additional $6.2 million of anticipated interest earnings expected over a several year time frame, and a slight reduction in our anticipated revenue from the retail delivery fee in future years. So let's go to the next slide. Just sort of a summary slide of the previous one, what this means for the state portion. As I said, it's increasing to 30%, which maintains vesting levels from the MMOF program. Across both the state and local program, these changes reduce the funding over the next 3 years by just over a third. And then within the local program, reduces it by almost half. There's also some reductions to the future year funds based on those updated forecasts, as I mentioned. So next slide. Another piece of our update was taking a look at the administrative costs. So through the MMOF program, we've always set aside a small portion of the local MMOF share to go towards the administrative overhead needed on behalf of CDOT to support these projects. So originally this was a 5% set aside for admin costs. It was lowered to 2%. And then last year, you'll recall there was a large sweep of existing fund balance out of the MMOF program from the legislature. About 71 million was swept from the fund. And at that time, the admin fund had a fairly large balance. And so to help offset this really large impact to the program, 3 million was returned from CDOT's admin pool back into the local program for awarding to offset that cut. Now at this point, we have almost depleted the admin fund, and there are a lot of staff time expenditures expected this year due to a high amount of activity among our projects, which is great. We're so glad MMOF projects are moving. But the proposal is to move 900,000 into the admin fund set aside, and then to resume a 3% transfer in future years to keep that admin fund solvent. Thank you. Next slide. So with all these changes, what we are recommending is for awarding agencies, so in this case, North Front Range MPO, to not reduce or delay existing MMOF awards. You'll recall if you were involved last year that there was a pretty extensive process to look at awards and reconstrain by fiscal year for your MMOF awards. And for this round of changes to financial projections, we are not recommending going through that level of effort. Instead, we're recommending using a backfill strategy that utilizes your future 2030 and 2031 projections to backfill your existing MMOF awards, and then also to use a cash management approach to manage these awards and funding amounts over the next 5 years. So what this approach does is it maintains the existing award amounts. Projects that are ready to go can advance and ask for their funds to be encumbered. And so it does give an advantage to projects that are ready to go and help the program by spending down available funds. And then projects that need more time may face delayed access to their funds until subsequent years because we're only able to encumber the funds that are available in a particular fiscal year. You can go to the next slide. This gives a little more detail on the cash management approach. MMOF projects can request their funds up to 2 years in advance, and funds are locked into a project when they are encumbered either in an option letter if the project is a construction project that is executed with an IGA. Just want to make these technical pieces clear for project sponsors that if it's a construction project, you do need the option letter to secure the funds. That's the action that encumbers the funds. And for projects that are studies or perhaps transit operations or capital, those are executed through a grant agreement and the funds are encumbered or secured at the time of grant agreement execution. So if you're a project sponsor, this is helpful information for you to know about when the funds are secured for your project. You can always reach out to us or your project contact at CDOT to get clarification if you have questions on that. And then as part of this cash management approach, we'll be developing a project funding schedule that will bring in information about what each project schedule looks like and is anticipated to be, so that we can align the funding that will be coming in over the next 4 or 5 years with projects, and provide more information about when projects can expect that they can access their funding through an encumbrance. So next slide. So summary slide here, next steps. There is no action required by the MPO to adjust any awards. We are asking all awarding entities to not make any additional awards until at least 2027. You may choose to wait longer than that, but that would be the earliest year that you could start looking at awarding remaining fiscal year 2031 funds that are not being used to backfill the existing awards. And for local agency project sponsors, we're encouraging consistent communication and coordination with the CDOT project manager to help fill out that project funding phase schedule. We're also asking existing project sponsors or project sponsors with existing projects to submit any outstanding invoices into CDOT by June 30th or as soon as possible. Especially if you have an MMF project with an outstanding invoice, getting it submitted now will really help the program draw down existing funds. And then next steps for CDOT is to work on that project funding financial schedule and address any questions that come up. So next slide, I think, is the last one. And this shares for you what this backfill strategy means for your future funding levels. So for North Front Range MPO, you'll see the shortfall column shows that compared to awards that have been made for the next 3 years, and what is now forecasted for the next 3 years, there's a $2 million shortfall. That can be made up through the next 2 columns using all of your fiscal year 2030 and some of the fiscal year 2031 funds. That means there's that $826,100 is the remaining amount of fiscal year 31 that could be awarded in the future. We'll also note that it is the legislature's decision if there are future changes to this MMF program. So stay tuned. We've seen a lot of changes in the amount of funding that's coming into the program. So it is a situation where we just need to be nimble and understand that changes may happen to future allocations. So with that, I'll turn it back and see what questions you have.
Yeah, so during the exercise last year, we had to take our original MMF award and reduce it by like 20%. And with that, now we don't have, budget to fund the entire project, entire scope. And I don't know if we're going to be able to really, deliver that project in the same form. Is there an opportunity to draw additional funds to bring it back to that, original award amount so we can deliver the project?
So it's a great question. The reduction we've been through last year brought the program more into better fiscal constraint, and we're only able to maintain that through accessing these future year funds, backfilling the awards to their new levels that were agreed to last year. I think at this point, your options are to either reduce the scale of the project or seek funding elsewhere, because there is no ability to award future fiscal year 31 funds until later on. And as I was saying, there's a lot of uncertainty about what we're going to see once we get to fiscal year 30 and 31. There was a lot of discussion at the legislature about reducing the general fund transfer permanently. And they landed on 3 years, but it's to be determined if that will actually return after fiscal year 29. I know that's not the answer you wanted to hear, but do you have any follow-up questions?
No, that makes a lot of sense. I was just hoping we wouldn't have to cut scope and we could, draw additional fiscal year 31 funds to fill that deficit. One could hope.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, thank you, Medora. And I think we'll move
Thank you.
to the planning agency in Arizona.
And then Tom won't be in until 1:30.
Okay,
So we can go to Brendan's.
okay. All right, then let's kick it off for the APCD updates with Brendan. Go ahead, Brendan.
Hey everyone, a pretty quick update from the Air Division. Pretty much one thing for there's no upcoming AQCC meeting this month because it is the Commission's annual planning retreat, which is open to the public. There's a public comment period, but I believe the whole thing is open to attend if that's of interest. I can link information in the chat after I'm done, but the event will be in person only and will cover programmatic issues, the legislative session, and the election of officers for the Commission's executive committee. And I believe it's in Pueblo this year, but I can send information regarding that. Yeah, that's it. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Any questions for Brendan? All right, seeing none, we will go on to the Metropolitan Planning Organization agenda, and then we'll come back to Tom when he gets on board. We'll look at action items, starting off with the 2026 Public Involvement Plan with Jonathan.
Yeah, so public involvement plan, we had a discussion with council at their last meeting. There was no real comments, just asking about some of the survey results. Public comment period is still open through June 21st. We have not received any new public comments. I've currently dealt one spelling mistakes. So it's still time if you all would like to leave public comment. It's still open and we have a whole page dedicated to it. At this current moment, if we don't receive any more, we'll just that page. I think that's it. So this is for recommending council approval. That would be on July 2nd, and then release would be after one weekend, all on July 6th.
All right, very good. Any questions for Jonathan on that? All right, so then I'll look for a motion. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Susan, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The 2026 Public Involvement Plan is approved. And we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is the Norfolk Range NPO Greenhouse Gas Transportation Report, and the 2050 RTP amendment and FY 26 through 29 tip. Withdraw.
Thank you. So Becky is currently down in Denver presenting at the Transportation Commission on our GHG report. This is the same report that we brought to you all last year that we've been spending almost 2 years working on. This report is for the 2050 RTP amendment, where we included a new project from Will County, adding 4 lane miles to Will County Road 66 near our MPO boundary in the east. This is also for the fiscal year 2026-2029 tip. So these are just some of the slides from the presentation that Becky is giving to TC. So I'll just go through some of them, not all. So this first slide is our modeled GHG results. So these are the reductions we're able to get purely through modeling without doing any other programmatic investments. So for this rule, we have 2029 because that is our out year at the tip. And per the rule, we do have to do GHG compliance runs for any tip out years, as well as 2030, 40, and 50. Technically, we have to do 2025 as well, but since we're in 26, we no longer are required to be compliant for 2025. So as you can see, we were able to pass for all the years except for 2030. With modeling, we had a 0.01 million metric ton shortfall with model results. So per policy directive 1610, which is a policy directive that outlines the GHG rule and requirements in compliance, there are certain programmatic investments that you can calculate off model. And these are things that travel demand models may not be able to accurately represent, or they can struggle to fully represent those emissions or those emission reductions. So we took credit for the following things. So bike lanes, bike facilities, sidewalks, pedestrian facilities, shared use paths, complete street reconstruction. We did have one street that qualified since 2019. New and increased fixed route transit service, intercity fleet average bus. So for that, that was busing as well as the Hooter Express. Wave transit fares 100%. We were able to get credit for that from the city of Fort Collins. Trip reduction program voluntary, that refers to the Go No Code 34 TMO. We were able to get some credit for that. We then have replaced signalized intersections with roundabouts, replaced diesel transit buses with battery electric buses, replaced diesel transit buses with hybrid diesel electric buses. And then surprising to staff, our biggest reduction for seen in broadband expansion. And the logic with that is with more broadband and faster internet, people could work from home more, which could encourage them not to be on the roads. And that we saw our largest reductions. So for this, we only applied it to 2030 action year, since that was the only year we did not reach compliance via modeling. And we were able to get an additional 0.02 reduction, which got us into compliance for 2030. So real quick at the timeline. As I mentioned, Becky is currently at the Transportation Commission workshop to discuss this with the TC. Tomorrow, TC will be taking a vote to approve. And then once we take that resolution, we will bring this to Planning Council at the June 2nd Planning Council meeting, where they'll approve the report as well as the RTP amendment in the fiscal year 26-2029 tip. So today we are looking for tax recommendation for Planning Council to approve the GHG transportation report.
All right, any questions for Jerome? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
I move to adopt this.
A second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. All right, with that, we'll approve the agenda item number 7 there. We'll move on to discussion items with the GET CNG replacement and expansion of bus purchases, project scope changes with NFRMPO.
Yeah, do you all want to bring up the slides or read it?
Yes, we bring this. And so last tab, where it says read regional transit.
Yeah, that's slide is the start. A little bit. So we in general wanted to both bring up some unspent CMAQ dollars, as well as just the current status of some of the regional transit services that the city of Greeley is providing. So, and just how that kind of applies to concerns that we have from like a long-term perspective. My name is Sam Feldman. I'm our Senior Transportation Planning Manager at the City of Greeley. And then we have Michelle Johnson and Tom Christensen here today too. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
I'm Michelle Johnson. I'm the mobility manager for transportation and public works.
I'm the deputy director of public works for mobility and operations.
If you want to go to the next slide. So the city really, just for some background knowledge, there should be one more that shows our UZA. They might have combined them onto one page maybe. So the city really receives FTA, Federal Transit Administration 5307 funds to operate our local transit services. Our UZA is composed of the urban portions of Greeley, Evans, and technically LaSalle. So our federal funds are geared towards serving the population centers in Greeley for local transit services. We get about $6 million of FTA funds annually to support both operations and capital investments. And this can vary year to year depending on federal apportionment. So I just kind of wanted to set the stage of where those local dollars are coming from and what the Federal Transit Administration dollars we get, what it's kind of intended for. So currently, the city of Greeley provides regional transit service, both Cooter Express, which goes from Greeley to Windsor and then over to Fort Collins. This service started in 2020 and operates as a commuter type service. It received, I believe, additional faster funds from the beginning of the service. And then there's an IG between the city of Fort Collins, Greeley, Windsor to maintain those operations. And I'll get into that here in a second. Then the city of Greeley applied for CMAQ dollars a few Culver projects ago to start the US 34 transit service. We also applied for FTA 5339 dollars to purchase vehicles associated with the startup costs for that service. But that's 2 years of operations dollars. So if you want to go to the next slide, it really outlines the existing kind of funding for these local and regional services. So the average daily ridership for the Cooter Express right now is about 92 rides per operational day, with an annual ridership of 23,646 as of last year. So to be honest, the level of performance of this regional route compared to some of our local routes is quite underperforming. Route 1, for example, locally really serves 23,000 trips per month. So, quite a scale of difference in terms of ridership on the route. The initial funding for the Cooter Express was a combination of local Greeley funds, City of Fort Collins with CSU funds, Windsor funds, and then CDOT Faster funds. Sorry, this is the wrong slide. I think that maybe it's combining 2 pages into one. I can pull that from here. Sorry. Okay. This is what you all should see. I apologize. So this is where you can see the 2020 initial funding mechanism that the regional partners came up with to start the service. And then what happened was you can see CDOT stopped providing faster funds to support the service, and the city of Greeley upped our both local contribution and contribution of UZA 5307 funds to keep the service running at the same operational level. So you can just kind of see that burden of maintaining the service shift over time to the city of Greeley. And currently our IGA doesn't really account for any type of increased operational costs over time from inflation or, gas prices changing, anything like that. So there's kind of this concern that the Cooter Express is now taking dollars away from operating our local services. And we are a little bit concerned with the level of ridership we're seeing, but obviously there's a lot of trips happening between our communities, and having the regional connectivity is something that the region as a whole has voiced is important. So that's why we kind of wanted to give this background of how the kind of financial status of this service has changed over time. And we just want to make sure that it is sustainable. So going into the next slide, this is a summary of the US 34 transit service that would be beginning next year. So this service connects Greeley, Johnstown to Loveland. The pilot service is planned to stop at the I-25 Centera Mobility Hub, just because the level of operational dollars we received from CMAQ, we were trying to make the most of the level of funding we have. We've really prioritized this service in our planning efforts at the region. You know, we've gone through Link NoCo and then Link NoCo Phase 2. There's also STIP dollars that are dedicated towards infrastructure improvements on US 34 to help support the service, mostly in the out years. But we have a concern that there's really been no long-term operational funding strategy identified for the US 34 transit service. We've only received these 2 years of CMAQ dollars, with most of the local funds coming from the city of Greeley, with some funds coming from Johnstown and Weld County. But in terms of like the long-term funding mechanism, we're kind of seeing a discrepancy in what's planned in Link NoCo and then what we're able to provide with our dollars. And would we be in the kind of same situation we're already in with Poudre Express, where we have to take those dollars from our 5307 fund? And if that's the case, that will directly impact our local operations. So that's kind of a red flag we wanted to raise for the region. If you want to go to the next slide, this just really shows the kind of difference in what's shown in our Link NoCo plan versus what we're able to provide with the level of pilot funding that we've received. So Link NoCo's plan service has longer run times and higher levels of frequency. And their annual cost estimate for that type of operation in 2030 would be about $5.2 million annually. And the origin and destination would start in Loveland Midtown and then go all the way into downtown Greeley, which is not the pilot service that we're able to provide with the amount of CMAQ dollars we're getting starting next year. So this US 34 commuter level of service that we've kind of modeled based off of what we are going to be able to provide during the pilot service, we could really only do peaks during the peak hours with 45-minute service during the peaks and then 2 midday runs, pretty similar to what you see with the Poudre Express. And in 2030, if you look at inflation and kind of our trends for how much it costs to operate, we'd estimate that this would cost about $960,000 annually. And that origin and destination would be Centera Mobility Hub to downtown Greeley. So not going all the way to Loveland with that level of service, with that level of funding. So I just kind of want to point out there is kind of this discrepancy in what we've talked about in our plans and like the reality of the operational dollars we've dedicated to the service. And I think I just want to talk about maybe what we, how we want to kick off some of those conversations beyond the pilot service. So that's kind of the first piece of information we just wanted to share with the group. The second piece, if you want to go to the next slide, is we have some additional CMAQ dollars based off of a discrepancy in what was estimated for purchasing a series of CNG buses versus the leftover rate we have. So I went through the TIP and there's a few different TIP projects between 2016 and 2022 that were allocated to the city of Greeley for CMAQ dollars in order to purchase CNG vehicles. And myself and Michelle were not here when those culvert projects happened. So when Michelle's team was doing some cleaning up with the FTA, we identified that these were unspent CMAQ dollars that had been sitting in our FTA account. All of the dollars that are going towards transit are programmed through CDOT FHWA, but they're transferred to the FTA for direct rate management, and that's kind of how this was identified. And so essentially following those vehicle purchases, our remaining balance of $996,000 is available due to those cost estimates of the vehicles being more than the actual expenses. So given kind of the context of the situation we're in with the Poudre Express funding and this kind of situation with US 34, we thought it would be valuable for us to have an additional year of CMAQ supported funding to start up the US 34 service to help the region have some time to figure out how long-term we're planning on funding this transit operation. So the request for today is to reallocate these unspent vehicle dollars through CMAQ to support an additional year of transit operations on US 34. So the next slide kind of outlines that discussion. Is TAC open to reallocating these unspent CMAQ dollars to regional transit operations on 34? And then just in terms of some next steps for the several regional transit services that the city of Greeley is providing. The Poudre Express, maybe we should be doing an operational efficiency analysis. We're currently utilizing 3 to 4 buses daily for ridership, but the ridership itself is underperforming right now. And we likely need to revisit these partner IGAs to kind of make up for those lost CDOT dollars. And then on the US 34 transit side, we really need to determine the partnership funding beyond these 2 or 3 years that CMAQ is supporting the operations. And we would like to see some collaborative next steps with partners that benefit from the service. And luckily, we have several years to figure out how we want to sustain the service. But I do think it's worth a discussion with the TAC, just given that things like the modeling exercise we just did depend on having regional transit services help reduce our greenhouse gas emission report. So it's been kind of prioritized by the region to facilitate these regional transit services. So I thought it would be appropriate to talk about today.
Any more acronyms in your presentation?
Sorry.
That's okay. The hard part, or the nerdy part about it, is we all kind of know the acronyms. So as it relates to this group anyway, those acronyms in other groups mean something else. I'm just curious. We talked about that Poudre Express. I can't remember what meeting I was in Severance, but we were talking about bus and how it doesn't work in our community. And but then somebody made a comment they've never seen anybody even on the bus. So are there numbers like for actual ridership?
Yeah, we actually provided some recent ridership as like in the appendix. It should be like 4 more slides down.
Okay.
You can kind of see both the monthly totals for daily runs, which this is.
That's funding. I'm just curious, people on the bus. Do you have a people count?
So in terms of like each run monthly, we pull it by the run itself. So the 6:30 a.m. run, for example, has a monthly total of 216 rides. So if you look at that total per month, this is probably about 2,000 rides per month, maybe 3,000 rides per month. Obviously, the ridership can shift based off of things like school being in session or not. If gas prices go up, you tend to see more ridership. But yeah, when you look at this compared to some of our other routes, it is significantly underperforming compared to our local Route 1 service has 200,000 rides per year, whereas this has 23,000.
When you look at that ridership level, are you looking at, does the route need to be changed to be in a more conducive space for folks to actually ride the bus?
I think that's part of what I would recommend is this service started in 2020, so it had kind of an odd kickoff year in the first place. It started operating in January. And now we have 5, almost 6 years of data to evaluate, are the run times appropriate? Should we have fewer runs per day to operate with fewer vehicles? Should we try to change the bus stop locations to be more conducive to increasing ridership? And I don't know if Michelle would like to add anything, but I think that's what our recommendation is. We should take a deeper dive into this route so that we can increase ridership or increase our operational resources.
So if you look at the numbers, it really is a commuter service. And I think that's what the idea was, to be focused on that. So I think that if we need to have a conversation with our partners for 2 reasons, financially and ridership. And if we pull out and just do a true commuter service and we pull out the midday runs, because there's not a whole lot of people going back and forth and it takes a really long time to do this whole round trip. So we're looking at those options. But it is concerning, as if you go back to the funding piece of it, is our 5307 funding and the city of Greeley funding is putting in the majority of it, and it really doesn't serve the community really other than to the transfer center. So I think we need to rethink what are we going to identify as commuter service? What is the point of that, right?
Does Windsor not put in that at all? I mean, it goes right through Windsor.
Yeah, Windsor, you can see they've consistently put in $115,000.
Sorry.
But that has been consistent despite losing the CDOT faster grant. So all of the CDOT faster grant got absorbed by either City of Greeley local or FTA 5307, which is supposed to more support local service. And we just don't want to be in the same situation when the US 34 service, the CMAQ dollars are up, because that will directly impact our ability to provide local service. And so just this conversation around how do we come together to decide how we want to continue operating these regional routes. They've been identified as being important for numerous reasons, connecting our communities, but to us, it seems a little bit like we're taking the brunt of one of the routes at least, and we don't want to see the same thing happen, just to be really transparent. And we'd like some collaboration around it, so.
I think to add to it, just so we're aware too, like if we do a 2-year or 3-year pilot, we still have several $1 million in buses that we have to do something with if it doesn't go beyond, say, that 3 years. Because now we have 11 years of bus service really we have to provide somewhere. So then the city's kind of tasked us with looking like, what are our options? Or do we purchase them, kind of pay back to FTA and then we'll use them locally? We don't know, that's just one of our options, but just something else that kind of tackles our topic. Sorry.
If there was like a regional operator, then, not saying that's what we do, but then we could give those buses to them to operate US 34. Like there's different options for what we could do to fix that problem, but
there really needs to be long-term funding. I wasn't here at the time, but it's my understanding that US 34 Express service was a failure in the past. And I don't know what the outcome was or why they did that. They started the program and it didn't go well. And you can see that the Pooter Express after 5 years is not at the level it really should be to be a commuter service. So if this is something that the region wants to do, we really need to come together as a group and figure out how we're going to fund it long term and whoever wants to operate it. Because we just go from if we go all the way out to what the MPO's plan was, all the way to Loveland, that takes a lot of Loveland stops that we're not getting in Greeley. So I don't want us to be in the same boat that we're in right now with the Pooter Express, that our resources are going to the region and not our community.
One thing I just want to throw out on the US 34 route is that we have a lot of anticipated construction along that route with the Merge project, with Kendall Parkway, all that stuff going on, and it's going to experience significant delays. If we, take money from elsewhere that could be used in the region and put it towards this service that could potentially fail due to, a lot of construction on that corridor, is that the right decision to make at this time?
I think part of it is you could encourage people to ride transit during construction so that you have fewer vehicle trips, but that means you have to be supporting it well enough to do that. So it's where do you invest that? And truly part of the issue is that we've purchased vehicles to operate this service, and there's a level of dedication to that to get it going that
you're kind of already committed to it.
To an extent, yeah. It's difficult.
And then my other question is, with these CMAQ funds, if they weren't dedicated to this, how would they be utilized? Would it go into a next call for projects and just be additional money in there, or what's the plan for that?
So the money that was left over from the purchase of some of our buses, it's capital.
So it's already invested in the city of Greeley.
Well, it's in our, no, it's not invested in the city of Greeley. It's in our FTA, I guess, bank account, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
So it was leftover money. So we wanted to apportion that to maybe give us another half year.
Sure.
On US 34. Because we really do, it will fail. And you're right, all the things that you're talking about is a huge concern for us. That we're going to start this program and then we're not going to have the ridership there. And then is anybody going to ever want to reinvest in it if it's been tried twice and failed?
What would you do with the buses that you have invested in if this program goes away? Where does that what happens to that? Because it's crazy to me to think, just logic. It's not being used and you need to shift the money somewhere else. But what do you do with the equipment and manpower?
So we have to go back to the FTA, and we don't have the manpower yet because we really pushed back on starting the service until permanent funding was sought. And so what we'll do is go back to FTA, and it's tied to another project within the city of Greeley. So I need to have a sit down with FTA to see if we can use those buses and do a portion of US 34 until the projects are, until the merge project and the mobility hub and everything is completed. I just don't want to put something out in the community that we can't support, and then we have to pull it back. And where are we going to be 5 years from now when we're ready for it? It was kind of premature to do this at this point in time when there were so many unknowns.
But we know it's tied to merge.
So,
That's a good question. For me to ask a question. What year of funding is the money that you have?
It was really weird trying to find the background on it, to be honest. What I looked through all the tips that are on the MPO website, and what I think there's slide 7 shows what I found. So it looks like we were given 2 different awards, between one for 2016 for $2.9 million of CMAQ dollars, 610 for local for CNG bus replacements, and then there was jet diesel bus replacements in 2020 for $1.5 million of CMAQ dollars. And then what the FTA said to us is that the grant 2024-039 was awarded to the city of Greeley for $3.1 million for the purchase of 3 CNG replacement buses and 2 CNG expansion buses. Of those funds was replacing existing diesel fleet buses with CNG buses and to purchase additional CNG buses for route expansion. The grant was comprised of CMAQ apportionments from FY28 through FY22. The vehicle procurement has been completed, but the grant currently has a remaining balance of $535,000. As identified in the original grant application, the FY22 amount included code 2024-039 represented only a partial use of the available FY 2022 CMAQ apportionment. The application specifically stated that the total FY 2020 apportionment of $1.6 million, only 1.159 was being programmed in the grant that was remaining of $461,000. So you combine $535,000 with $461,000 and you're left with what is in our account. To be honest, neither of us worked here when a lot of these things were happening, so we're just trying to we identified that this needs to be cleaned up, and that's why, you know, we've just identified that there are these issues on our regional transit services, and we have this extra money. The region has identified that these are important services. Maybe this is a good use of those dollars, but yeah.
Can I just highlight one thing really quick about that? The one concern I have, and similar to the MMOF conversation we just had, is the older that, if we don't know when we're going to start the route and then it's operational dollars on the 3rd year of that route, how old does that money get by the time we actually spend it? And are there other projects that could use that money sooner and then trade our money that's years out, right? There's several projects in Loveland that could use dollars sooner. And so are there, I think that's a conversation maybe of like trading years of funding. I don't know, there's probably complexities in that, but letting that money age, sort of the MMOF situation that we're in right now, we're having to give money back happens because it looks like we don't need money because we're not spending it. When really it's identified for something, it's earmarked, it's coming, the need is coming, but.
I can answer that as far as so 5307 funds are the federal funds from FTA, and they expire 5 years. So when you get them, you have to allocate them out. So I checked with FTA this morning, the CMAQ funds do not expire. So even if we still have the money in there, they're not going to expire like the 5307 funds.
But is it a good look for us if there's projects that could be built sooner to have money sitting stagnant, or could be, you know, as a region, it's probably worth a conversation to see if there's a trading of years of funding. There are projects that are ready to go sooner. So just a thought for the NPO too.
And the other thing to take into consideration when the CMAQ money comes from, it comes from state of Colorado, and then it's sent over to the FTA. But we can only get the funds for, we'll apply for the funds for 26 in October, and that's all we have in there. And then the next time we can apply is in October of 27. but the CMAQ funds that are already there, we could utilize if we had it to start the service. If that's what the region wants to do, is start a service that we're unclear about whether or not it's going to be successful.
I have one more question, sorry. The Clean Transit Enterprise, and I don't know anything about it, so any information is helpful. What funding are you getting from Clean Transit Enterprise? What are there opportunities that we could all be seeing in that area for these types of regional projects? That's kind of very rarely do you get a new funding source.
For sure. So to be honest, there's been some pressure that we just use our CTE funds just for US 34, and I don't think that's equitable necessarily to our local services. The City of Greeley Formula Fund for CTE is $1.2 million. We are planning on putting additional service on Route 1, which is our busiest service, Route 5, which is our second busiest service, and Route 3, which is a key transfer point for the system. But I don't know if there'd be like a conversation around, we all agree to use a portion of our CTE funds to help support the service. What does that look like? How is that equitable? I think that's the exact kind of conversation we could have as a region, of making sure that it's apples to apples fair, to help support some of these regional services. Like, I just think we need to have some of those conversations.
In our 5307 funds that we're using to support Cruder Express, we used to get a little bit more money in 5307, and now we're only getting about 4 million. So the 6 million, we've lost $2 million in our 5307 funds, which is really designated to support service locally. So now we're using part of that plus our local match to support Cruder Express. And I don't think that we should be able, we need to support local service. It's been such a divided out that really doesn't provide quality of service when we really should be doing that.
Yeah, our mobility development plan that we completed, we did an origin destination analysis of you're driving yourself versus taking transit, what's the difference in time, and it's significant. Like, there's a lot of updates that the city of Greeley needs to make to better serve our community, like our local community, with transit options. That's a lot of the goals that there weren't a lot of service changes made in our system for many years, so we're starting to work towards that, but obviously increasing the level of service, all dollars are limited to do that. So just to be honest, it's that balance of local and regional needs. So,
and I'd like to just put one other thing out, sorry, is that when we hit a population of 200,000, we will no longer receive operational funds. And so we've got to figure out what we're going to do from a regional perspective when we hit that 200,000, because there's going to be no more operational funds. And how are we going to support all the services in the region? What is that going to look like? I'm sure Fort Collins is in that boat right now because they're way past that. I don't know where Loveland is, but as they grow, we're going to not have any operating funds. And if we don't approach it somehow now and be prepared for the future, we're not going to have very good quality public transportation in the North Fork Range.
Is that money already programmed in a grant?
Which money are you talking about, the CMAQ funds? It's in our bank, per se, the funds that we're asking, the 996, it's already in the grant program. But it's just sitting there, so we have to de-obligate it from capital and move it to operations. And only the MPO has the ability to send that to FTA and let them know to do that. The funds that we applied for the 26 and 27, that is not in a grant. We can't apply for the grant. The state has already turned over the 26, but we can't apply for it until October of 26. And then the 27 funds, the state will have to move over, and we can apply for that in 27.
But the old money is not sitting in the grant. It's not.
No, it is in the grant.
The way that I read it is that's why there's like some money that's been apportioned and some that hasn't. So the grant, the 2024 grant, we apportioned $3.1 million for these buses. And then we purchased them, there ended up being a remaining balance of $535,000. But of all the CMAQ dollars, so what we didn't apportion yet in that grant was an
Oh, I
additional
see.
$461,000. So that's the total of $996,000.
You're saying those funds don't lapse, even though they're
No.
converted to 5307 funds.
No, they do not lapse like 5307.
Interesting.
Do they still require tip amendments and stuff like that approved by the MPO?
Yes.
So we have to have a formal letter before we do any of this. That's part of the, obviously bringing this up to you all. And in general, like there's these unspent dollars, we should all agree how we want to use them, but trying to just have a broader conversation around this operational issue. So
What is your plan for the last part of your request while the region determines a long-term funding strategy?
who is that? What is that? To be honest, I was hoping that the Link NOCO would provide some more guidance on long-term funding strategy. When you look at the way that it's currently written, it doesn't really outline how we should long-term fund these services. And that's a lot of our concern, is that we haven't all agreed as a region how we're going to continue providing these regional transit operations. And we're worried that we've looked at history of what's happened with the Poudre Express. When state dollars went away, the city of Greeley kind of picked up the extra, and we're concerned that that would really put a burden on our local services. So I'd like us to figure that out as a region. And likely this would need to be an IGA at the end of the day, but we just wanted to kick off the concern with the conversation with everybody.
I was waiting for that conversation the whole time we did the Link NOCO meetings. It felt like we talked a lot and asked very few hard questions or got to some hard. I think we needed to get to that point in that conversation. I don't think.
I would say I tried really hard to point that, like, hey, we haven't really decided how we're going to fund this long term. And I think there's been side conversations around, is this an RTA, or, you know, what is this long term? And I think this is us raising the flag of, like, this is going to be a problem, or we can't accomplish what we said we would like to if we don't all come together and talk about this. And we didn't get the outcome that I was hoping for with the Link NOCO phase 2 of maybe deciding what that looked like. So
Just another question, I don't know if anyone from CDOT is online or that CDOT transit group, but have we ever talked about a busting route for 34? Has that ever been something we've approached CDOT with?
I know when I was at the MPO, we asked them about it, and what we were told, because they were looking at the outrider service between Sterling and Greeley, and we're like, well, there's probably more demand between Greeley and Loveland. The issue was the way that they were funding that was through rural transit dollars, and both Loveland and Greeley are urbanized areas that aren't qualified for those funds, so it wasn't a qualified outrider service just due to how they were funding it. But I don't know on the more traditional busing side of things if that's. I've never seen any conversations about that.
We're starting to look at traffic projections that exceed what's on I-25 for the 34 corridor. So I think when we start to look into the next, we're doing the 2050 RTP, we start to see volumes on US 34 that exceed I-25 volumes. Is that something that we need to come together and find a way to do the same thing that happened on I-25?
Josie has her hand raised.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, I don't want to speak on behalf of DTR because it's really not my subject of expertise, but I do know already where busting's at, we need more funding for operations. So I think 34 would be an awesome busting route. I just don't think the money's available at this time. Maybe in the future though, if we can find a sustainable funding source to fund our current routes and maybe some extra for some other routes, but I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. But I don't think a busting route on 34 is going to happen anytime soon.
That's always the impression I've gotten too. Thank you, Josie.
It's zero of the things you don't ask.
Yeah, for sure.
So even though it's a state highway, I think that the US 34 service, as well as the Poudre Express, is important for the region so that we can start that connection. We just need to figure out from a regional aspect, how are we going to fund it long term? Everybody benefits from it, but unfortunately, the one that's bearing the cost of it is the city of Greeley, using funds that really aren't. I mean, if you look at our UZA and you look at where the Pooter Express goes and where US 34 goes, it's way out of our UCA.
I'm gonna say something. So as we're going through this discussion on US 34 and trying to solve, the right-of-way dedication project or future vision project that CDOT's leading, what their modeler is telling us that any mode shift to transit is almost negligible in their model. They're saying, even if you invest really, heavily in it, it's negligible. It's not going to solve your problem. That's what they're telling us. And we've been pushing hard because if we could show data that, hey, this is our solution, this could help, the future vision, and we could actually get a reliable, reduced transit service from Greeley to Loveland as part of that future vision, then I think we can sell it. If you can get from Greeley to Loveland in 15 minutes, let's invest in that, But if CDOT's not gonna, buy into that vision and really support that in their corridor, based on their modeling data and stuff like that, it doesn't look like they are, then I don't know if it's worth investing in transit along this corridor. Unless CDOT's certified.
Them not supporting it, that's data, right? The volumes are so high that you have to have, the volumes on 34 are so high that it doesn't look negligible compared to the volumes. That means they don't support transit on 34.
Sure.
I think they're saying is that the best investment for the dollars we have, maybe it's worth putting, but we can only build it out so much, right? At some point you can't build a 12 lane. Shouldn't probably build a 12 lane either.
Exactly. And I think in order for it to work, you need a dedicated bus lane. You need that, either express lane or you need that bus lane in order for this vision to work.
And if you go back to this slide, just kind of showing the difference between what Link NoCo projected and the pilot, I think slide six. That's where I think some of the concern is too, is we're having a hard time even finding dollars to support that commuter level of service. If we really want to see that mode shift benefit, which is what kind of Link NoCo is envisioning, which is phenomenal, it does cost the region quite a bit more annually to operate. And that's where probably none of our local dollars add up to $5.2 million annually. So we probably need to look at additional sources of revenue for this long term if we want to provide this level of service. And maybe this isn't a reasonable level of service, at least in the next 5 or 10 years, but there's just that conversation that's worth having that I just want to raise the red flag, I guess, of that discrepancy.
So it sounds like this item is really two-pronged.
Yes.
The requesting the additional funds and then having or trying to initiate a more regional conversation about both Pooter Express and 34.
Yes. Yeah, if you kind of go back to the slide, sorry we're jumping around a lot because I kind of recognize that I wanted to provide the context of the full situation we're in and with the request. So there's a CMAQ reallocation and there's kind of what we're doing with Pooter Express, like we kind of talked about, it may be worth spending some effort on looking at an operational efficiency analysis, maybe revisiting if we're going to the right locations, if we're doing the right level of service. We have the data on how many boardings we get for each time. Should we try to combine a few trips to try to get more passengers per vehicle? And then the third item is really visiting this bigger item, which is the US 34 transit. How are we going to operate this after the 2 years of CMAQ dollars are gone? Or 3 years if the CMAQ reallocation is supported. So. And I don't know if we make the MPO, if doing like follow-up items on each makes sense. I just wanted to bring this the tax awareness, so.
I think we can ask, we were discussing, I think timing wise, this does time pretty nicely with the RTP and we will be going into corridor visioning, got my words messed up there. So I think as part of that, we can have that discussion. I was just writing down that it sounds like we would benefit from having either a meeting or series of meetings to discuss this further. And I think the MPO would be more happy to help facilitate those efforts, especially since these are regional corridors and we're talking at regional level. I can go back and chat with Becky, talk about timing, things like that. I think the MPO can definitely help facilitate those conversations and bring the right people to the table. Because if there are concerns about how feasible these routes are, we would like to know that so that on our end, we don't spend time planning for a service that's not going to happen. We can look at different transit options or at least give us some more guidance on where to take the direction for 2055 RTP. And if we're not able to come up with a solution in time, 2060 RTP. So
Yeah,
we
and
would
it would
definitely
be-
like to partner on that.
It would be nice to know, like, if we didn't have these services, how does that cascade into things like greenhouse gas? Or like, I think that's an important piece of this conversation. Yeah. Sorry to deliver kind of bad news to everyone, but we just wanted to be transparent. We've been trying to solve this problem for a while, and at the end of the day, it's kind of a regional effort, so.
Yeah, I think everyone's aware of like really these financial discussions we've had. So when we look at our local match to our 5307 funds and, you know, we're being asked, okay, you're spending it where? And then they're, well, why if it's UZA funds, right? So I think that's one discussion for us internally, just kind of what we're looking at. But again, I think if we don't do the third year on this pilot based on those leftover CMAT funds, it's only 2 years. What happens at 2 years? Again, we still have several $1 million in buses that either we have to run or somebody has to run and are on this regional transit. It's, you know, it's tied through 1601 through the MERG project as well. There's actually, you know, kind of a lot going on.
Would it be worthwhile setting up like workshop sessions to investigate this? Because I don't think this is something that, you know, this is going to take a lot of time and effort, more so than just a TAC meeting.
For sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
Is this something that this group makes a decision on, or does this have to go back to planning council?
Planning council would make the final decision.
Okay, so
We
you
give a
make
recommendation,
Okay.
but they may or may not listen to it.
I was just gonna say, we could do a lot of work and it could get to the politicians and they just. I'm just curious as in if it might be even wiser to just tap the shoulders of our politicians, let them know this is a concern that's coming up, just to get a feel to help us in our discussion, because we can do all we want, but I gotta tell you, put a politician hat on, it doesn't take much for me to say, why are we spending all this money when we have no ridership? Get rid of that service. Easy budget cut. That's what they're going to say.
We've just on our end have talked to our planning council representative about this already, so.
Okay. I would hope each of us maybe take this back to our representative on planning council. Just let them know that this is being discussed. We're going to have some regional discussion and what the concerns are. That's my opinion. I don't know. We only have a couple, 1, 2, 3. Everybody else is online as far as electeds.
All right, any other comments on this?
Thank you, Hannah, for that presentation. Yeah, all the acronyms.
One way amongst other nerds that know what I'm talking about.
Do you have an estimate of when this would come back to TAC for recommendation to the planning council?
So ideally, we should be, if we're going to do the US 34 service, we should be starting that in January of next year at the latest. And so it would be nice to have some direction of where to start, you know. I don't know, Michelle, how you feel about that, but I would like us to have kind of a strategy for how we would like to fund this beyond those couple of years ahead of that. So we have 6 months then to kind of have these conversations, maybe have a regular meeting to make some recommendations at least.
Yes, because I'm concerned about starting a route in January and then having a ridership, and then we're spending all this money, and it doesn't look good, you know, either to the FTA. We don't ever want to jeopardize our funding from the FTA for any of us that receives it.
It doesn't look good to the general public to see a bus go by with 0 people in it.
Yeah.
With our names plastered on it. That's the big one, and it's being talked about.
And we need to make some decisions on Twitter Express because we're in the summer months now, and then school's gonna start up. And so what is that gonna look like? Are we gonna pull the midday off and only do strictly commuter service? What are we gonna do about that? Because we really can't justify the ridership on the amount of money that we spend on.
So maybe work session group is for 34, and then the Twitter Express, maybe all those that are already in the IGA, we just need to have some follow-up discussions as well. And if anyone else is interested in being a part of those conversations. It doesn't just need to be who's currently in the IGA, as we're trying to say. But
So I noticed you're from the town of Severance. Do you have any transit available to you at all?
No.
Well, you're part of the region, right?
Part of the region. So we are still part of the plan council. So if it goes to plan council, my mayor can sit there and go, nope.
Right.
Why am I spending money on this? It doesn't go to my community and there's no ridership. It's logic.
Right. Unless we look at restructuring some of it.
I just don't know. That's why I asked that original question, what's your ridership? Because if hardly anybody is even riding on it, are they even really going to choose to ride it? Where's the pickup? Where's the drop off? What's it for? How far do I have to walk when you drop me off? Where am I going?
So I would tell you the ridership is from UNC to CSU. And it just goes through Windsor. And there's a couple of stops in Fort Collins, but there's some folks who live in Fort Collins and work in Gridley. And so we have some of that, but not much.
If you're talking like a regional transit, I definitely include Buffalo in that discussion because, you know, we're going to be part of the US 34 piece, major stakeholder in that. So I would be interested in that discussion just from that perspective.
absolutely. Well, we can look back. I appreciate the time. I mean, like, we just wanted to outline the concerns, so.
Yes, thank you for taking the time to listen to us because we've had some concerns for a while.
All righty. Tom's back on. All right, so we'll jump back up to the Region Planning Agency for Air Quality agenda. Got agenda item number 4, which is the Regional Air Quality Council updates. But Tom, go ahead, Tom.
Hi, everybody. I checked in with Becky and I couldn't be on before 1:30, so sorry I'm jumping in here in the middle. I just had a really brief update. I didn't want to share my screen, which I'll do in a minute. I mainly want to announce that we have 4 workshops related to air pollution control strategies that we're going to hold this summer. July 13, 15, 28, and then on August 12th. And so in the chat, I've put the registration link and then just an image of what the registration looks like. And so perhaps it's possible to include that information in the notes from the meeting today. So let me just throw this up there real quick. Hopefully you guys can see this. On the 13th, we have a meeting it's a pre-meeting for all 3 of the subsequent blueprint workshops. And so the idea is to go over grounding materials that will be helpful to everybody. We have a number of work products that are being finished here at the end of June. And then starting on the 15th, we have some topical workshops. The first one is about, stationary point sources and oil and gas source and the strategies from our blueprint last year on those. We've done a lot of additional analysis, so we're looking to go over those. And then on the 28th, we're going to focus on the non-road or engines and the non-point. So these are things like consumer products that are, not tracked at the point source level, so they're tracked at the county level. And then on August 12th, we'll be diving in more detail on the on-road mobile emissions strategies that maybe you folks would be most interested in, including our indirect source strategies that we've been holding some work group meetings on. So if you go to the link that I put in the Teams chat, you can sign up for all these virtual workshops. And the advantage to that is even if you decide you don't want to attend later or you can't attend, you will be notified as we add materials and distribute them, so you can kind of get warmed up for them. So that was the main thing, is just to give everybody a heads up for these upcoming workshops, and I encourage folks to attend if they're interested. So that was my report for today.
All right, any questions for Tom? All right, thank you. We'll go back to discussion items with the Connected Communities 2055 data request with Jerome.
So I don't have really anything prepared for this. This is just more of a time to be able to go through any questions you may have on the data request. As a reminder, I sent that email out on May 27th, and the due date for that is June 30th. So far, we have received submittals from the town of Severance. We've also received submittals from Transfer as well. We've also been in conversation with City of Loveland for their traffic count discussion as well. So with that, that is due on Tuesday, June 30th. Why are you staring at me? I know.
We're all in the CML, so we had to go to them. We had no choice, so.
Okay, so as you go through those efforts, anything comes up, please email the planning email. If you need any additional time, we can work with you on that. Because some things are more urgent than others. Like I do believe the traffic counts is an important priority for now. But we can work the schedule. We can work with your schedules. Since these project submittals are very important, not only for our model, but also for our financial plan and for us to show fiscal constraints. So with that, are there any questions, comments, or concerns on the data request?
And then we'll move on to outside partner reports. We've got the NOCO Bike and Ped Collaborative, so written report of the handouts, and then regional transit agencies with Joshua.
Yeah, not touched on Greeley's update for US 34. But Pat Moore with Greeley Evans Transit retired after 40 years. This was a very beloved member of that staff. So Terrell Wessels is replacing him.
Yes, she's, Pat was our safety and training supervisor, and when he retired, we refocused some of his duties to Carol. She's our new safety person. And then we took Pat's position and we're repurposing it to be a transit planner so that we can really focus on how we move forward with the transit in Greeley. So I think that's going to be a positive.
It will not be running free fare for the summer because there will be no CASTA grant this year. They're debuting their new bus route in their July 4th parade, and I think they'll be issuing a press release as well, so look out for that. I'm sure they've invited all communities. So it's very exciting. They're still working on their system optimization or redesign their routes to be more efficient. For Holt or Loveland, they got through their triennial pretty clean. They just had one finding, which is a great success. They're reducing some service over the summer. 2 30-minute routes will be interlining. and then they'll be back in service when school starts. They're experiencing some staffing shortages. And they'll also be implementing their SB 230 funds to increase service when school starts. They've also purchased 2 new hybrid electric buses and a new CNG bus. There's a cool new function on them. They have geofencing where it runs 100% electric until it exits the geofence area, which I thought was interesting. And those hybrid electrics are diesel electrics, which I didn't know existed. But they've completed design on their new transit center. There's anticipate construction starting soon. Government will also not be running fare free this summer due to the cost. Looks like in Windsor, there's going to be a new bus shelter on Fairgrounds Avenue and 71st Street. And for transport, we are full go on implementing our phase 1 of our optimization plan in August.
All right, very good. We'll move on to mobility updates. Is Tanya?
No, they had a conflict, so their updates will come in next month.
Okay. That's on to next month on that. Then we'll go to reports. The June Planning Council meeting summary draft is written report in the packet. Got the Northwest NFRMPO air quality program updates, is a written report. 2026 Colorado legislative updates, it's a written report. Mobility committees, is a written report. And then the Connected Communities 2055 RTP fact sheet is going to be.
Yes, so last month, I let you all know that once the RTP project webpage was published, I would let you all know. It has been published, so the easiest way for me to share that with you was to share our fact sheet for the 2055 RTP. This is a one-pager that we are giving out at outreach events, and it's also available on the project's website to let people know this is what the RTP is, this is what we expect to go in at. This is a very general timeline for the plan. And so the fact sheet includes the link to the web page itself, and there's also a QR code that has a link tree. As we start to have more web pages and things happening with the RTP, more links will be added to that link tree related to the plan. That's all.
All right, thank you, Michaela. And then we'll move on to the roundtable. I guess we can start to my right.
I only have a couple of updates for Severance. We just, our little bitty town, just finished up a 3rd stoplight, so exciting there. Actually, the residents are super happy about that. It was much needed in the water analysis, so happy about that. The other exciting piece is we just completed payment of the Great Western Trail. So another portion of that's been paid, I think almost a mile through our community headed north towards Eaton. So that's exciting. Of course, that was utilizing grant money of some sort. I don't remember which acronym it fell in, but it was in there for a while. So we're glad that's finished. So a couple of big things.
All right.
Our council last night approved on second reading an IGA with Timnath that is the beginnings of the Harmony Corridor, Weld County 74 study for the entire corridor, but looking at specifically improvements between County Road 5 and Timnath and Strauss Cabin in Fort Collins, but it intends to look at more regional traffic generation and that type of thing. So we've reached out to other communities like Severance, Windsor, and Eaton, who are, and as well as the Larimer counties, stakeholders as well. So those meetings should be scheduled soon now that the IGA is going. So
who did you reach out to? Severance, do you know who it was? Me?
A while ago it was me. They reached out, I think.
Did I reply that I said yes? When you get old like me, you kind of forget what you did. Okay, I'm hoping I did. I know
This
I
was
did.
5 or 6 months ago.
Okay, that's a long time ago. A lot of meetings ago.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And that was something we would like to be involved in, even just to be part of the conversation, so we can incorporate that into the RTP. From Fort Collins, Mark Varada will be the project manager on that, and we'll be reaching out for meeting times on that side.
Thanks, Dave. You get anything for the Levelland?
Yeah, you know, June is walk and bike month, and we've got lots of stuff going on for Everybody Bike Day on June 24th. We got 12 morning stations around our rec trail loop. And then we've got a big afternoon bash at Grimm Brothers Brewing, Loveland, which should be really nice. We have our Boise traffic calming project, which is going to add 3 rectangular rapid flashing beacons, center median refuge medians at 3 locations along Boise Avenue. We're starting construction on July 6th for that. We are delayed on our US 34 widening projects. We're experiencing some right-of-way negotiation delays, but we're working through it. Hopefully, we will deliver those projects in 2027. And just one other thing I just wanted to know, driving in this morning from Greeley to Loveland, there was 2 accidents, one at Promontory and one at County Road 17 on US 34. They looked both pretty bad. So just letting everyone know the safety on US 34 is something of concern, and we really need to focus on that from a regional perspective.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
On the Greeley side of things, other than what we just talked about on Burge, cities received our raised federal grant for agreement for signature. We're advancing the CMGC procurement and program management efforts. And we've completed our master service agreement and infinite cost estimator. And we're continuing our financial planning. Our next steps is to do the procurement for the CMGC, continue our NEPA development, progress on utility and right-of-way coordination, and review our engagement plan. For the 16th Street Enhancement Project, we are 98% complete. Our major project elements, including lighting, seawalls, landscaping, and pavement markings, have been substantially completed. If you haven't been down to 16th Street yet, it looks beautiful. It's a great example of the Main Streets program. So next steps include completing some masonry wall and paver installations, some thermoplastic pavement markings, cantilever light pole and sculpture installations, and temporary lane closures to, and we'll provide public notice for that. And then Safe Streets for All, the last I have heard is we are working on our categorical exclusion documentation. That's been provided, or excuse me, that's been approved by FHWA. So we're proceeding towards phase 1 execution of the agreement. We've updated our Speak of Greeley page to outline updates on the program. We are going to be doing public outreach throughout the summer and fall on the planned improvements. Yeah, so those are the main upgrades there. O Street and 59th is on track. The concrete pavement has been poured. 16th Street remains open and both eastbound and westbound traffic. And we are, next steps, completing the installation of the medians with concrete stamp. And it should be open to traffic by June 26th, so here in a couple weeks. Those are, I'd say, the most important regional updates. So.
Alrighty. So at the July 2nd Planning Council meeting, we'll be bringing the regionally significant corridors of the 2055 RTP, as well as the vision statement, goals, objectives, and regional performance measures. So depending on how those conversations go with the RSCs, if council gives us a thumbs up, we'll begin the visioning process. And as part of that visioning process, we will be creating an online mapping tool where people can go and submit comment on those corridors. We did do that with the 2050 RTP. We found it to be very successful. We got a lot of good feedback with that. So we're looking to do that again for this RTP. And then with the goals, performance measures and all that, we will set those targets if we get the thumbs up. If not, we'll be coming back to TAC on either both those items for additional discussions if we do receive any significant comment from the council. And then this year we are we are co-hosting 6 different bike to work day stations, which is the most that we have done since I've been at the MPO. We are doing 2 in Loveland, so 1 in the morning and then the afternoon bash. We're doing 1 in Fort Collins, 1 in Windsor, and then for the first time, at least since I've been at the MPO, 1 with the town of Tiverton. And then, thank you, and with Greeley. And then as part of the RTP outreach process, we are looking to table at either community centers or rec centers to try to catch the public where they're at. So if you have any good contacts for that, please send that our way. You can send that either to me or the planning email. And that's all I have.
Right, so in addition to Bike to Work Day, looking ahead to July for the MPO's outreach efforts, on July 11th, we will be at the 7th Safety Fair. On that same day, we will also be at Eaton Days. And then on July 18th, we will be at LaSalle Days. Next, for the RTP, just a heads up, we'll be setting up a specific newsletter emailing list for project updates. All TAC members will automatically be added into that, but we'll also have it available for the public if they want to sign up. So if anyone else is interested in being added to that, please let me know. I can add you to that list. We're also working on getting a story map set up through ArcGIS. It'll initially just have some pretty basic information about the plan, what it is, who we are. Once the corridor visioning goes live, that's likely where it will live, is within that story map collection. And then as different pieces of the plan get completed, information on those will start to be added to the story map as well. And then at the July 2nd Planning Council meeting, I will be going to the council with the final crash dashboard finally. And pending that discussion going well, that should be published afterwards in July. That's all from me.
So from me, tomorrow, we will be having a meeting with both of the consultant of our modeling, the travel demand model and the urban sim land use allocation model. And after that meeting, probably tomorrow and not later than Monday, we will be sending out the agenda item for the modeling steering team meeting on June 25th. And other than that, I just, along with the Jerome's discussion, I just wanted to give some of the clarification on the travel demand model. So in the spreadsheet of the travel demand data request, there are observed traffic counts, what we needed from all of the community members of North Front Range MPO, and the transit data that is only concerning for the communities that has transit facilities, Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley. So I will appreciate if you can see the list, and then other than that, we will prefer if the observed traffic count table will be in a shapefile format. If not, then the spreadsheet will contain a geocoded column that will help us to process it in the ArcGIS, because that is something we needed to feed into our travel demand model. And other than that, for the observed traffic count, we are requesting for different station counts that will help us to know the travel pattern of the whole region accurately. And that's all from me.
All right. Exciting news with the transportation improvement program. So that was TAC. You all recommended the council approval for that, I believe in September or October. That was delayed for that many months due to GHG stuff, which Jerome mentioned earlier. So I guess assuming Becky's killing it at DC right now, and assuming council approves it, that will be released on July 6th. So the fiscal year is 2026 to 2029 for the TIP. That will include, when that's released, that'll include the TIP narrative, the updated TIP tables, the TIP project map, And then we also did the story map, which is basically the executive summary review of what the tip is. A lot has changed since October when I wrote this, so I have a lot of updating to do, and I will reach out if I have any questions. But we will make sure you all have access to the update tables and the forums to submit amendments, modifications. And that's all for me.
Eric, did you have any? Nothing from me. Jump online, see if there's any roundtable updates. All right, seeing that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. We'll be back in Level next month. And NFRMPO TAC meeting will be July 15th.
Send over that.
Yeah, it should also be in the.
Your notes, it wasn't.
I sent it back to you. Okay.
Maybe it was, maybe I'm just missing it.
I'm happy to back out because I definitely, it just kind of making sure everybody's aware of kind of this. Please do.
Sure. I'm gonna meet with Will, later this week. But I was like, yeah, I know what we need to get.
What happens? Like it's not moving in the right direction. You know, like in 2 years of CMAC, and it's gone. We'll be.
It's been for me, years a little bit. It's not first transit, so. See if you can discussion.
Yeah, no, okay. I'll reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Yes, at the very beginning. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Have to do IGA meetings every month anyways, for prep and just, yeah, for you the context of the whole situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Anything, you know, it's why I try to be the person like. I was gonna ask.
Yeah, here's the big question. So it's just to inform.
For the,
We have, well, it's posted.
Oh.
For the. At least it's not. It's hard. Maybe something will come out of the pipeline.
Yeah, it sounds like there's maybe a request coming to have a greater share.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to make sure that it go. That's why.
It's also in they opened it up and they increased the payment, so they took it years. So the success dropped. And they did that. Yes. And now really are the tech line, but I'm not in there.
Oh.
Severance wasn't anymore. I didn't want more. We want to do more.
putting money into that, so just be us saying that this might be some.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so when they.
Okay.
Somebody from.
I was like, this is.
Yeah, I guess it would be a good. Just let them know it's coming.
Your life's about to get harder. So you might. Figure that out. And then it's a little bit weird. You got Will. It was just like a big ideas, a lot of stuff. He's kind of filling in also this transcripts going public works. But it kind of thoughts. I kind of reflecting. Sometimes they don't. Get your projects done.
Oh, regional last, right? Try for it.
Yeah, so it's me and that.
I think it's been an atmosphere, but nothing like real.
Nicole was saying, you should reapply. Yeah, a lot. What did that do? They already made it known that they don't have meetings, so I already get ready. This is from home. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be that person that's like constantly. I don't just go.
I guess we do.
I'm talking about things that
Just be a
So, yeah. Just Twitter express.
I hope probably it's good, you know,
Yeah, I don't think it's the next step is either, but I think having the conversation about regional routes.
Yeah.
Altogether.
Yeah.
Just so that he's aware. Because it does sort of seem that, it really seemed that they already want to figure out of it. Based on the way it's currently set up, so.
Yeah. Right. Sure. We would
That would
really
be one there in
understand.
the owls.
We just went through.